you should probably expect spoilers.
Life is Strange takes place in the land of Arcadia, which is home to some of your favourite YouTube personalities, including Austin and Strex, and what the fuck am I doing? Life is Strange takes place in the seaside town of Arcadia Bay, where Maxine Caulfield, aka Max, is studying photography at Blackwell Academy. Max lives the life of a typical teenage introvert, spending most of her days worrying about class, attending said class, getting distracted in said class, and travelling through time. So context then, what happens is the game starts us off by throwing poor little Max into the middle of a tornado, which is about to wipe out Arcadia Bay. As the tornado approaches, Max desperately seeks refuge at a nearby lighthouse on top of a hill. Upon reaching the lighthouse, the base of the tower is hit and falls on top of her. Of course, Max then wakes up in the middle of her photography class and can't quite figure out what the hell just happened. It felt too real to be a dream, so what was it? After class, Max makes her way to the bathroom to throw some water on her face and chill out, but is rudely interrupted when she witnesses some girl with bright blue hair getting shot and killed. What a fucking day you're having. Max is somehow able to rewind time to just before the murder and wakes up back in the classroom again. Realizing she could now control time, or at the very least rewind portions of it, she decides to try and save that girl's life. In doing so, it turned out that the girl she saved was Chloe, one of her old friends from her childhood. However, it would be this heroic action that ends up causing a butterfly effect of events. To make things even more peak, a series of unexplainable phenomena begin to occur, like snowfall during sunny 80-degree weather and an unexpected solar eclipse. It's made clear that the tornado which ends up destroying Arcadia Bay is also part of that phenomena and is an actual event that occurs 4 days in the future. Now it's up to Max with her new abilities to find a way to prevent that catastrophe from happening, as well as uncover some of the mysteries surrounding Arcadia Bay, while still also dealing with her emo hipster life as a college student.
Visual design.
Regardless of the fantasy and sci-fi overtones featured in Life is Strange, the world still very much aims to represent a depiction of normal life. The game doesn't start portraying its characters anything more than what they were to begin with, despite the phenomena occurring around them. These are still just everyday people. Well, give or take a few psychos here and there, but you get the point. While Max might have become some sort of makeshift Time Lord, it doesn't suddenly mean she's donning flamboyant outfits and claiming herself to be a superhero. She's still just a teenage girl from a little seaside town. As such, from a visual perspective, Max is meant to represent a student who's slowly coming of age, but not far enough over that hurdle yet. She's still learning who she is and what she likes. While some students in her class might prefer to experiment with their looks through fashionable clothing and hairstyles, Max keeps things more on the steady regular. She cuts her hair fairly short and doesn't make much effort to style it any sort of way. Her items of clothing are usually a combination of jeans, t-shirts and hoodies, while the footwear is no more than your standard Converse imitation. Max's appearance is not meant to bedazzle you. I believe this to be a game design choice to remind the player that Max is not suddenly indestructible and godlike. Even though her newfound powers are fantastical, the character herself must continue to be viewed as someone with flaws, inexperience, and overall still appear human. The game must never reach beyond its boundaries of how Max should be portrayed, otherwise the tone in which the story is presented in will change, and for the most part, it successfully keeps Max right where she needs to be. At one point, when she begins spending more time with Chloe, Max wears an outfit that is a little out of her comfort zone. Although the reason she wore the outfit was due to them being lent to her when she didn't have any other clothes to wear, she doesn't brush the garments off as an inconvenience and even seems to respect the style. It might be due to Max feeling like she has some particularly big shoes to fill in regards to who the clothes originally belonged to, though I like to think it's also about her letting her barriers down and experimenting with life a little. Personally, out of all the clothes she wore during the game, this outfit was my favourite. Not only did it look quite eye-catching, but it also allowed us to see the character in a different light, and for Max herself, it offered her the chance to gain a perspective that she may not have experienced before.
Personality.
Although the game is built up of player choices, there seems to be a set structure to Max's personality so that the options presented to you are actions Max might do but are never out of character for her. For example, one of Max's notable personality traits is her introverted behaviour. Parties are not really her thing, but she likes to keep an open mind at times. When a college disco is being organised later on in the game, you can decide if Max would mostly be against attending, or you can decide if she wants to break out of her shell a bit and choose to put herself on the guest list instead. Both choices deal with sides to Max's personality that are a possible branch for her to take, and never really push the character towards an option that would be unlikely of her. Regarding her personality, Max tends to be a little more than self-conscious, often wondering if she's making the right choices and talks internally to herself constantly. That said, while she might lose herself in her own thoughts, she does have a grasp on reality and is extremely observant of what's going on around her. She is able to approach people and speak to them just fine, so shyness is not really part of her genetic makeup. The reason that her introverted aspect comes into play is because she feels more comfortable observing the world from a safe distance instead of being the centre of attention. Fitting then that her career choice in life would be photography, capturing everything that she can see without directly interacting with the environment before her. As the game progresses, Max finds herself in a lot of catch-22 situations. These ordeals naturally do take their toll on her, and she does have moments of insecurities from it, which is entirely understandable. It doesn't stop her dead in her tracks though, and she keeps soldiering on through literal doomsday to try and find a way to make things right. In actuality, this makes her an incredibly strong individual by the end of the game. She may not have been so at the start, but through hell or high water, Max really did try to find the best timeline for everybody, though whether or not she succeeded in doing that is of course entirely up to you. One interesting side note that is worth mentioning is Max's dislike for being referred to by her proper name, Maxine. According to the meaning, Maxine in Latin is the female equivalent to Maximus, a name that symbolises strength and greatness. With Max often questioning herself as well as preferring to be anything but the centre of attention, this shows she doesn't connect with such a high praising title at all. By shortening it to Max, it further emphasises her disconnect from it. It could be that regardless of if she herself felt great and important, the universe at large seemed to have other plans for her, so having Maxine as a name could be considered symbolic of the fact that she was destined to do something life-changing whether she liked it or not. After all, it's not like she had any choice in being called Maxine by her parents, that was just given to her. Just like she didn't have any choice in suddenly waking up one day with these weird as fuck powers that literally appeared out of nowhere with no explanation, and seriously, what the fuck was with that? Like, where did these powers even come from anyway? Someone get Blinks on the phone and ask him Wagwan, we got an 18-year-old girl here breaking out more rewinds than Craig David.
When the crowd say ball, selector.
Importance.
The obvious thing for me to say here is that Max is clearly the most important character in the game. She's the main protagonist and is responsible for saving the day, knowing she's the only one who can do anything about it. But while the setup for Life is Strange is constructed around this impending doom, it's not what the game wants you to focus on at all. From trying to save a character on the verge of committing suicide, to searching for a teenager who went missing some months ago, from the little side stories to bigger community conspiracies, Life is Strange wants your attention to remain focused on the people living in Arcadia Bay rather than what's about to become of Arcadia Bay. Honestly, with the amount of things going on in Max's life, I kept forgetting about that bloody tornado anyway. It's the main threat looming over everyone, and it's there to make sure the player feels a certain level of pressure every so often, but your attention should be more drawn to the people around you. And one person in particular stands out as far as Max is concerned: Chloe. Chloe is a troubled teenager with a lot of issues, and it's an archetype we've seen before, yeah, I know, but the game was built around archetypes in mind so that the characters would be easier to associate with. Life is Strange doesn't lose any points from me if Chloe is a crappy edgelord. At least I knew exactly what I was getting. What made Chloe interesting though was her connection to Max. The two of them used to be best friends as kids before Max and her family moved out of town. Then things got very Facebook-ish, with Max and Chloe saying they'll keep in touch and always be friends, and before you know it they've drifted apart and it's nothing but invites to play Mafia Wars. When Max returns to Arcadia Bay and runs into Chloe again, it kickstarts their bond, reminding Max of the person she left behind. Max is relieved to get a second chance at being her friend, and hopefully a better one than she was before. The game deals with all elements of their friendship, from the innocence of youth through the pains of growing apart, reunification, mild jealousy, excitement, bliss, and love. The aspect of love is an interesting inclusion, I felt. As far as Max goes as a character, whether you purposefully steer her in a direction that's closer towards Chloe or not, in the end the feelings are somewhat the same regardless. Max and Chloe are in love with one another. The game could have just kept them as friends and the story would have still had the same effect, but they specifically wanted to make it known to the player that this friendship blossoms into love. Why do I feel this is important to point out? Well, because it's real. This is something that's real to a lot of us. Sometimes the people we fall in love with are our friends. It happens. It's not something you can control either. You just spend time with a person and before you know it, you've slipped and fallen in love with them. It's a common thing that I'm sure a lot of people have gone through. And the reason this fascinated me was because we very rarely see this type of love in our games. Usually the basic setup is one character meets another character and through the course of the game they fall in love. But Life is Strange handled this differently. It established that these two characters were already friends and had been friends for a very long time. They had history together, but in the end, that bond of friendship turned into a bond of love. It was refreshing to see the emotion of love be presented like this. With Chloe being as important to Max as she is, as time goes on, Max begins to put Chloe at the top of her priority list. Chloe's actions also begin to affect Max's decision making, and it doesn't help the fact that more often than not, Chloe just happens to be the person to cause trouble in the first place. Chloe at her basic level is somewhat of a toxic person to be around. Sure, the occasional burst of a bad attitude can be fun and cool, but being constantly on edge mode all the time is a little counterproductive, especially when Max is trying to do the right thing and all Chloe wants to do is fuck shit up. They do work well together when things are sailing smoothly, but put the pair of them in a split decision situation and Chloe will end up going one way while Max intends to go the other but ends up following Chloe instead. It's love, but it's troublesome. And ain't that the way love goes sometimes. And speaking of which, actually, I just want to send a quick shout out to the character Warren. Like, brother, for real, you took the hits, fam. And it wasn't happening for you. That shit wasn't popping between you and Max. You know, life ain't strange, man. Life is hard. And you got the hardest end of that stick, brother. Rest in peace.
It was a clear black night, a clear white moon. Warren G was on the streets trying to consume some.
Conclusion.
Max won't appeal to everybody. Maybe she looks a little plain to you and you need someone more extravagant and captivating. Maybe her introverted nature and antisocial traits make you cringe and you want someone with a bucket load of confidence. If so, then there are plenty of other characters out there that will cater for that. But maybe you don't. Maybe you're the person that needs someone a little more closer to home. Perhaps you didn't always fit in with the cool crowd at school. Perhaps you questioned yourself a little too frequently. Perhaps you even fell in love with a friend. If anything here sounds familiar to you, then consider spending time with Max. She's not a character designed to grab your attention for being everything you ain't, but rather is a character that associates with everything you might be. Minus the time traveling powers. Unless you actually have those. In which case, give me the lottery numbers for next week, yeah? Safe.